We're all told stories when we're young. Fairy tales and folklore meant to both entertain and warn, but some stories transcend mere tales. They grow into legends, passed down through generations until fact and fiction blur, and you're left wondering what might be real. And shielded by dark magic lies a secret so terrible it seems humanity would have done better to forget. This is the story of a forgotten race known only as the Horde. And this is the story of the wall that keeps our world safe. Deep in the hidden recesses of the earth, buried under tons of rock, many years ago, in a time before memory and even before written history, there existed a great evil, an evil so sinister it chilled the hearts of men. He wasn't the strongest nor the most skilled, but he had something the Horde lacked: wit. He brought something the Horde hadn't seen before: plans. And when their triumphant roars echoed across the land, he activated the trap. Molten metal flowed, sealing the top of the wall, hardening the mixture of earth and copper, turning it into a barrier that shone like burnished bronze. Legends tell of strange lights flickering on the mountain's peak and eerie whispers echoing around the base, voices in languages long dead or perhaps never spoken. The people kept away from the cursed mountain. Maps erased its existence, and those who stumbled upon it swore never to speak of it again. Suddenly, without warning, the drone went silent. Its footage, when recovered, showed only darkness. But for the final few seconds, hundreds of glowing eyes could be seen peering out from the gloom, watching the drone with cold, alien sentience. Across cultures and continents, there are tales of monstrous creatures imprisoned behind an invisible wall. Each story varies, yet they share common threads: a monstrous race confined behind a veil, kept from devouring the world. It's a reminder that our world is not our own, that we are merely guests on this planet, sharing it with forces that dwarf our understanding. The next time you look up at a mountain or stare into a dark valley, remember, behind that wall, the Horde waits. And when the scratching starts again, it won't stop. Why? Because the wall still stands, but it's weakening. There are places best left unexplored, mysteries best left unsolved. There's a reason why some cultures teach their children to steer clear of certain places, to never speak of certain things. It's because there are powers in this world that we are not equipped to handle. Well, here's what I'll tell you. There are things in this world that we don't and perhaps shouldn't understand. It speaks of a time before time, of a world in chaos, and of a great evil that threatened to consume all of creation. It tells of the Horde, an army of shadows, mindless and cruel, whose sole purpose was to devour and destroy. And it tells of the wall, a barrier of immense power erected to hold back the tide of darkness. But it also speaks of a prophecy, a prediction of a time when the wall will weaken and the Horde will seek to break free. It says that when this happens, every city will burn, every river run red with blood, and every living thing will tremble before the Horde's might. There are forces so old and so powerful that our modern minds struggle to comprehend them. Some say the Horde's scratching has worn grooves into the wall's surface, allowing a sliver of their madness to seep through. The wall was completed, trapping the Horde beyond its confines. Back then, a group of Soviet explorers claimed they discovered the Lost Valley, where the wall was said to be located. But as they approached, their radios began emitting only static. And when they finally returned to base, one of them was found missing. When they found him, he was barefoot and clad only in the tattered remnants of his uniform, his eyes wide and vacant. He kept repeating the same phrase in a language that defied translation. All anyone could make out were the words scratching again. It was as if whatever lay behind the wall had reached out and touched him, driving him insane. The warrior had used their own strength against them, sealing their fate. But he didn't just use brute force and strategy. He incorporated something older, something more powerful. Warding runes, symbols of immense power, were carved across the wall, infused with the last of the old magic that predated the Horde and dwarfed their power. First, he gathered the scattered remnants of humanity, those who hadn't fallen prey to the horde yet. Together, they delved into the deepest mines, extracting metals from the heart of the earth. Then, aided by sorcerers who drew power from their desperate hope, he forged a wall. This wasn't any ordinary wall. It was made from the same stuff that gave the horde their strength, metal, but also earth and stone, mixed with strange materials that gave it almost magical properties. While others prepared to fight the inevitable, this man went another way. He retreated away from the horde, deeper into the wilds, where few had ventured before. And there he observed, studying the horde's every move, mapping their paths, learning their habits. He was watching them as one would study a beast, observing its strengths and weaknesses, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The horde was born of chaos and destruction, their very essence intertwined with pain and misery. Nations rose and fell trying to stop their advance, but none succeeded. Swords bounced harmlessly off their hide, bows shattered against their thick skin. Battering rams were but toys to their colossal strength. The horde seemed unstoppable, their march unending. It was a prison crafted to contain the very embodiment of chaos. Inside, the horde milled about, trapped and powerless, their numbers dwindling due to their own insatiable appetites. Outside, the people looked on in awe and terror as the living mountain that was the wall imprisoned the creatures. Generations passed, kingdoms rose and fell, but the wall remained, standing as a silent testament to humanity's ingenuity and desperation. Then came the war that should have ended all wars. They were once men, yes, but not men as we understand it. Instead, think of creatures warped not just in form, but in the very core of their souls, twisted by powers beyond mortal ken. There are those who claim the horde wasn't born, but bred, by a mad god, whose amusement lay in sowing discord and reaping suffering. These beings were demons incarnate, vessels of unimaginable wrath. Yet despite their monstrous nature, they were not without purpose. See, the horde wasn't just a horde, but a legion, an army without equal, tasked with a simple directive: devour. Crops, livestock, even their own kind. Nothing was sacred to the horde. Their numbers were countless, staining the earth with their presence like a plague of locusts. Wherever they tread, death followed, civilizations crumbled, and entire cities were wiped off the face of the earth. They spared nothing and no one. There was no mercy in their eyes, only the insatiable hunger for more destruction and consumption. When the horde moved, it was like a wave crashing upon the shore, relentless and inescapable. It was during a time when the stars themselves seemed to weep and the rivers ran black with despair that a lone warrior emerged. They scratched at the wall, but it held firm. It wasn't just metal or stone. And when he knew he was ready, he returned. But he didn't come with weapons or armor. As the horde approached, sensing victory within reach, the warrior led them to the wall. The horde roared in anger, frustration, and fear. Is any of this really true? Are these just stories meant to frighten us? It's said that sometimes at night, the wall groans as if in pain or perhaps in warning. Now, let me tell you about a strange occurrence that happened in 1987. Then in 2003, a drone was sent to map a remote and previously unknown valley nestled in the Himalayas. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Let me tell you about a book, an ancient text containing knowledge that's been hidden from the eyes of men for millennia. This ancient text isn't the only source hinting at the horde's existence. Now, I don't ask you to believe in these tales, but I do ask you to consider the possibility that there might be things in our world that we are not meant to know. Think of the wall not just as a barrier of metal and magic, but as a symbol of our world's fragility,